In this clip, I'm going to show how to compare the results of two separate queries together. This is useful if you have two databases and you want to extract information from both of them, compare them, and make sure it matches. So we're going to add a new interactive comparison test. This opens up the interactive comparison editor. Now here I can see both my queries side by side, and I'm going to point my expected query to the higher ed connection. And I'm going to select from the student table, and I want the student ID, first name, last name, and birth date. And I can format my SQL statement here, and I can execute it to see what results I'm getting for this. So that gives me the left side of my query. On the actual side, I'm going to use the higher ed data warehouse connection. So this should have the same student information in the dim student table. And here again, I want the StudentAK, alternate key in this case, which is the same as the student ID from the first table. Having the key in here makes it easier for me to compare the records. First name, last name, and birth date. Now I can line up the columns even though the names are slightly different with the underscores, but to make this just a little bit easier on me, I'm going to go ahead and alias these so they have exactly the same name. And finally birth date. And I actually don't need to alias the student ID because we're going to be setting that as a key column, which will match it up for me automatically. And I'm going to format the SQL on this one and go ahead and execute it as well. So now we can see both result sets side by side. We want to configure it to be compare between each one. So the first thing I'm going to do is set the student ID as the key. So I set that, it automatically picks up that the first column is the same data type, so it assumes that it's a key as well. You can see the icon in there. And that immediately shows us that we have all these rows, and the light gray indicates that we do have the same values in each row, and we can see that easily in the preview. We can also see over here in the summary that we have one extra row in our actual set, which is our unknown record for our dimension. We expect that. We don't have any rows that differ, and we don't have any aggregates out of tolerance. However, the only thing we're comparing right now is on the key. So what I want to do is go to the Comparisons tab, and because these have the same column names, I can auto map them, and it's automatically going to create a comparison between each column using first name, last name, and then birth date. And now that I have that, I can see that I'm getting one extra row in my actual result set, which is going to be reported as a difference. And if I want to change that, I can actually say ignore rows that are in the actual set only. So basically ignore any extra rows over there. You'll notice this one's no longer flagged, and in our summary it's reported as ignored. So this is configured the way I want. I have all my data from my student table and my source database is ending up in my data warehouse. When I click OK, this is actually going to add a new test, and it creates all the necessary components of that test. The query to execute to get the expected results, the query for the actual results in a second execution track, the assertion to compare things with all the options already set, and the actual query values and the comparison manifest that tells it how to compare the columns. So I can actually go in and edit these things individually if I'd like to make additional changes, or by clicking here I can open up the interactive comparison editor again and make my modifications here. And that's how you use the interactive comparison editor.